race is not given to the swift or to the strong, but to the one who endures to the end. So pick yourself up, shake your past off, put one foot in front of the other, and do it again. When you hear that little voice saying no one believes in you, you're too far behind, you're too small, this isn't working and this isn't worth it, another voice rises to remind you that the same power, the same strength, the same spirit that raised the Savior from a borrowed grave is alive and active in you. The same God who delivered you from the lion and the bear can and will deliver this new giant into your hands. So draw the line, take your stand, and just like you wielded your weapons last time, do it again. You've been here before. The battle is not yours, it's the Lord's. And if he caused you to triumph back then, be confident. He'll do it again. Yesterday, today, and forever, Jesus Christ is the same. And in his name, you are unstoppable. But receiving this promise requires perseverance. I know sometimes it's hard to keep it moving when you can't see your progress, when you've lost your perspective, when the pain has pushed you past your breaking point. But this is no time to tap out, because the end of yourself is the beginning of him. So fix your focus, wake your courage, stir your confidence, and do it again. Set your face like flint with determination and declare, I will do it again. When it doesn't make sense, I'll do it again. When I have to go against the wind, I'll do it again. When all hell is breaking loose, when it feels like hope has disappeared from the horizon, and I've waited for rain, but I don't see any signs, I will look again, lifting my eyes to the skies. I see a cloud the size of a man's hand starting to expand, and it may start small, but little is much when God is in it. And I know I'll win if I just don't quit. Don't you dare quit. When you've marched 6 laps and still the walls won't fall, take another lap. You're closer than you think you are. You're closer than you've ever been before. Walk on. Show up today and the next day and the next day. Press till something happens. Pray till something changes. Push till something breaks. Say within yourself, whatever it takes, whatever the cost, no matter what they say, no matter what I feel, I've got a job to do, and I will see this through until God's kingdom comes and his will is done in my life. I'm leaving every excuse behind. I'm being transformed by the renewing of my mind. I'm taking up my cross and following the one who never stopped short, who never surrendered, who said he'd never leave me or forsake me. Jesus is with me always. He came and conquered. He died and rose again. And now he's calling me, causing me, commanding me to breathe again, hope again, trust again, give again, change again, expect again, rejoice again, fight again, rise again, right here, right now, in the name of Jesus, I will live again.
Good morning, everyone. Will you stand and sing with us? Who breaks the power conquers the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquers the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquers the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Yeah, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place. That you would bear my cross. You laid down your life. That I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, this is all that you've done for me. All that you've done for me. Good morning, everyone. My name's Droopy. We're so happy that you're here at Paradox Church. You know what we like to say, come as you are, no perfect people allowed. So right now we're just going to take another minute and we're going to continue to sing. And for those of you who are new to this or you're wondering what's going on, what are they doing, why are they doing this, music is one way that we love to connect with our God, who we know absolutely loves and adores us. And we love and adore him back, so that's what we're going to do. This song is called Great Are You, Lord. You give light, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. Great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour back to all the earth. All the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry. These bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. Here we go. Sing it again. So happy that you're here. Go ahead, take a seat, check out this video.
Carl's intimidating to me. Carl. Good morning. It's sunny outside and you're inside. What does that mean? I was thinking about this a minute ago, that the only thing that's a shame about us all being together right now is that we're not out enjoying the sun. Finally, that decided to break. So, you know, we do have curtains over the windows. Hold on. Can you guys, I'm sorry, you guys tracking me? No, doesn't really matter. I'll be back. You know where I live. Let's bring some light into this room today, for heaven's sakes. Is that better? All right. Well, you guys are really easy to impress today. Woo, we opened the blinds. It's good. I'm just happy it's finally sunny out. So, they told me I had to be here today, otherwise I'd be out back in my yard fixing stuff up for summer. So here I am. I'm glad you're here with me. We are 2 weeks into the series that we started last week. And I will tell you, the reason we're in this series for me is very simple. And so I want to make sure it's simple to you as well and that you get it. The reason we're in this series is because I find that there are a couple times throughout the year where people have a greater tendency to be open to change in their life. And I think this is one of those times of year. You know, Easter probably being the pinnacle of it, but just that whole spring season, life is coming up from the ground finally out there. The weather's changing, the winter is breaking, and it just kind of puts us in this mood for change. And I love it because we get to see a real example of that every year on Easter, just like we saw a couple weeks ago, where all of a sudden across the world, hundreds of people start going back to church for the first time in a long time, or for the first time ever. We saw it where people start coming in the doors that haven't been here in a long time or haven't ever been here, the lives that were changed, people making a decision for Jesus, embracing new routine, embracing new habit. But here's the danger, is that whenever there's a time in our life, it happens in January, it happens in the fall, it happens usually in the spring, where suddenly we want to approach change, what happens weeks later? Right, it slows down and we just fall right back into all of our same old habits and rhythms. And so what I wanted to do coming out of Easter this year is keep this idea of change in front of us for a few more weeks. And so I want to ask you to help me go back, help all of us go back to where we were last week and kind of touch back on what we said last week. So this is a quote we used. You're probably all very familiar with it. On the screen, I want you to finish it for me. Insanity, name of our series, is doing the same thing over and over again and finish it. Expecting different results. So here's what we did last week. We talked about this idea that Jesus, when he came, said, I have come that they may have life and have it in its full. Some versions say abundant. That there's this promise of Jesus that life done with him, in rhythm with him, yields an abundance of life for us. But here's the reality, and some of you know this, on the opposite end of the spectrum, so often the life that we end up living doesn't feel like that. The life that we end up living from day to day feels a little bit more like a kind of a rewind and repeat of the days before it, and the days before that, and the days before that, which can oftentimes make life feel more just boring, mundane, just repetitive, and not like the abundant life God said he came to give us. I even read a statistic this last week that said that on average, most of us throughout any given week make 40% of the decisions that we make them out of habit and routine, which only underscores what we said last Sunday, which is that it is so easy to go through life just on autopilot, where you're just kind of checked out. It's just you're doing what you do. You're behaving the same way you've always behaved, reacting the same way you've always reacted. It's so easy on our part to just go through the same motions in life, and yet, I think this is true for probably most of us, if not all of us, we long for change. At some point, in some place in our life, we long for change, even if it's just a little part of our life that we want to change. But maybe for some of us, it's broader than that. Maybe it's a bigger change that we're longing for and looking for in our lives. And yet we're never going to get there if we continue this insane habit of desiring change but doing nothing different. And I think the real danger in all of that, especially for those of us in this room that we consider ourselves followers of Jesus, is that you cannot follow Jesus and stay stuck in the same routines, habits, and behaviors that you've always been in. So we said this last week. When Jesus says, follow me, he wasn't presenting to us simply a religion. He wasn't presenting an idea. He didn't say, believe in me. He didn't just say, love me. He said, follow me, which carries with it the idea that there is constant movement. You cannot follow if you're not moving. Jesus is an ever-moving God. He says, you want to follow me, you want to know me, then you got to move with me. We're going to be active together. When we find ourselves stuck in the same ways we've always been, being the same person we've always been, it becomes almost impossible to follow a God who is ever moving and not staying in the same cycle. And so how do we do that? So that was last week. So here's what we're going to talk about this week. So if I could sum it all up, last week was essentially there is change in life that is only available when we break out of the habits and routines that get us stuck. Here's this week. You ready? There is change in life that's only available by embracing routine. Like, you're psychotic now. You know, you just contradicted yourself. Nope, not a contradiction. It's a what? Help me out. Bingo. It's a paradox. I don't know if you ever heard that word before. It's a paradox. So, and the reason is because I love you, Abel. It's my biggest fan on Sundays. The reason is because there is a huge difference, though they look similar. There's a huge difference between routine and endurance. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The change that only comes through embracing certain routines and habits that I think God invites us into. Where change is on the opposite end, is on the far end, is at the result of staying the course that he calls us to. So I believe, like many of us do here, that this book was written by him. And so it makes sense. I say this a lot. I know some of you may be tired of it. But it makes sense if we're going to open it and try and understand it, that we ask for his wisdom to do so. So I pray every time before I speak. And if you pray, if that's a part of your life, it's a part of your relationship with God, if you know him, hopefully it is, it should be, then maybe you even want to take a minute and just pray as well. If not, let me just pray for us all. Father in heaven, I am so thankful to get the chance to, again, do this morning and to be with a community of people, some of which who are here very desperate to hear from you today, some who aren't convinced that there is a you to be heard from. And wherever we're at on that spectrum, my prayer is that you would be loud and clear. God, I pray that everything I say on this stage today would be in line with the character of Jesus and would be in sync with the truth of the scriptures. And I know that as a guy, as a man, as a person, I am fallible and I'm certainly open to making mistakes. And so I just pray that your Spirit would be the one who teaches us the most. That somehow from this stage, what we would hear and feel and sense is your presence. Remove me from this work, from this morning, from this place, that you would be present. You've said you can be. You've said you will be. Where just 2 or 3 of us are gathered in your name, I would guess there's at least that many of us here gathered in the name of Jesus. So be present to us, I pray. Speak to us. Be good to us. Be gracious to us. And lead us, I pray, towards yourself. Towards life that's found in the changes that you're inviting us into. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So I read something this last week that Oh, I forgot something, didn't I? I did, didn't I? What did I forget? I forgot that I forgot something, but I know I forgot something. Offering. Thank you. That's a really bad thing to forget. Oh, man. So if you're new at Paradox, this is a part of our worship. Hold on before you start grabbing stuff. But we have also, if you're not new, then you know this. We've kind of switched up how we do the offering. So yours truly is a numbskull and is trying to get used to the new habit. So here's just what we do, if I can tell you really quickly. We believe, very much so, that the story of the Bible is ultimately about the God of creation who emptied himself on our behalf. And I want to say that before we take up our offering, because here's what I never want to happen with this moment, is that it's just routine. We just go, oh, this is what we do, this is habit, it's routine. Listen, if this is just routine, and that's the only reason you do it, don't do it. Because God doesn't need your money. The Bible says cattle on 1,000 hills belong to him. It's all his anyways. Here's why I do this, and my family does this, is because I believe that God emptied himself on my behalf and on your behalf. And so in response to that, I try and be generous back with just a portion of what I already believe he gave me and gave us. So if this is your church, then here's what I'd say. You know what to do at this moment. If you're just checking out Paradox, or especially if you're checking out Faith, you're not sure what to do yet with this whole God thing, hear this. He is a giver. He's not a taker, and we are givers. We don't want to take from you anything. This, for us who do this, is a moment of worship. So I just invite you, if it is a moment of worship for you, then be a part of it with us. So grab the bucket, pass it down the aisle. I don't even know where I just took it from. Set it on the floor. Somebody will come by to get it in just a minute. So thank you for letting me have that brain fart moment. All right, so now I'll tell you about something I read this week. Read this article this week about New York that I found incredibly interesting, especially because I think some of you have probably been there. I know some of you live there, and so I want to see if anybody knows this. So in New York, there are throughout the city a little bit more than about 3,000 of those push buttons at intersections. You know, I'm talking about the things you push, and suddenly the hand turns into the walking guy, and now you can cross. There's a little more than 3,000 of those scattered throughout the city. That means that every single day, thousands of people are pushing thousands of buttons thousands of times. Here's the kicker. None of them work. They're all disconnected. As a matter of fact, they were disconnected when the city switched over to a fully automated traffic light system. And so now every single day, it's crazy, thousands of people go through the habit of pushing those buttons thousands of times, even though they do absolutely nothing. And you might go, well, people need time to get used to new habits, right? It takes time to get into a new routine, and forever they've been pushing them, and now they need to get used to not pushing them. You ready for this? They were turned off over 30 years ago. Yeah, isn't that crazy? I'm just curious. Has anybody been there in the last couple of years? Crossed the street, pushed the button, yeah? Did you know they were disconnected? You did? And you live there? Yeah, that's crazy. We need to talk afterwards. I do counseling on Wednesdays and Thursdays. But it's insane. But here's the reality. So many of us, if we take an honest evaluation of our lives, here's what you're going to find. You're going to find habits in your life where you push buttons that don't work. Right? Routines, habits, behaviors that are just kind of pointless. At the end of the day, it's like, why do I go through that? And then there's some routines and habits and behaviors that aren't just pointless. There's some that are just flat out costly. And we keep up with them, and we keep going through them. So I'm going to admit something to you that I had debated not admitting in this service because my wife attends this one, and I think she's back there. She is. So I admitted it in the first, so somebody called me out and said, if you're going to be brave enough to say it in the first, you need to say it in the second when your wife's in the room. So I'm going to admit this. I love coffee. Now, that's not a surprise. She knows that. And I particularly love Starbucks coffee. I don't care if you think they burn the beans. I love the beans. I love Starbucks coffee. Now, the problem is that my new routine about a year and some odd months ago when we moved into this place required me to drive right past a Starbucks every day that I came into the office. So I thought, you know what? It's a new routine. It's a new habit. I'm used to working out of my office at home. So I'm going to enjoy a couple of trips into the office with a nice Starbucks. So I went in and I got my Starbucks, and this quickly became more of a habit than I thought, to the point that on a number of occasions, you don't need to shake your head so big, honey. A number of occasions, she's even telling me, sweetheart, on the American Express, I see another $20 reload on your Starbucks card. I'm like, I don't know where that came from. The boy did it, but the thing is, when you go to Starbucks, a lot of times they give you these little green stoppers, and I realized these make great bookmarks. So I started saving them. And before I knew it, I had enough for all the books I was reading that I'm like, now what do I do with them? So then I just started throwing them in the cubby inside my desk when I would get into work. So I'd get in, I'd have my Starbucks. And I didn't realize until recently just how many of these I had collected because I was just kind of throwing them in there in a little bowl until like 2 weeks ago, I accidentally knocked that bowl over. And I was like, yikes. So Well, yeah, counseling's on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Thank you. Smart Alec. I was tempted to add it all up and tell you what that probably came to based on what drinks I know I usually order. I'm not going to do that. There is a certain amount of denial I am going to choose to live in. So I confessed it publicly. We cannot talk about it at home now. It's off limits. But here's the thing. Humanity has never needed push buttons and Starbucks to get into habits and routines that were either pointless or even costly. We've been doing this to ourselves since there was any of us to occupy this planet. Matter of fact, the leading contributing author to the Bible, a guy named Paul, once wrote to the church in Rome. So in the Bible, it's a book of Romans about this very idea, because he was not at all unaware of or detached from getting himself in cycles and habits that he wished he would be broken out of, some of which were probably costly, others maybe pointless. So this is what he writes. If you have a Bible, go ahead and open it up to Romans chapter 7. If you don't, we're going to put all the verses on screen for you. Verse 15, he says this, I do not understand what I do. You ever felt like that? Anybody ever been so frustrated yourself you don't even get yourself? This is why. He says, for what I want to do, I don't do. But what I hate, that's what I do. And if I do what I don't want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is no longer myself who does it, but it is sin living in me. You ever feel like that too? You ever feel like you do stuff and you don't even know why? You're like, man, that's not me to react that way. That's not me to shop that way. That's not me to respond that way. It's just, he's going, I don't do what I want to do. I do what I don't want to do. And then when I don't do what I want to do or do what I don't want to do, I have this thing inside of me. It's not really me. It's something else. It's a sin inside me. And it's just, so he keeps going on. He says, I had a lot of coffee today. For I know that good itself does not dwell in me, that is, in my sin nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I can't carry it out. For I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I want to do. This I keep on doing. Now, if I do what I don't want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but it is sin living in me. So I find this law at work. Although I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being I delight in God's law, but I see another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind and making me a prisoner to the law of sin at work within me. What a wretched man I am. Who will rescue me from this body that is subject to death? Like, do you get that from it? Do you feel that for your own life sometimes? You're caught up in things you don't want to be caught up, and then you don't do the things you want to do the things you don't want to do, and then you try to stop, and then it's like something takes over, and then it's not even you, and it's like, ah! Here's a little what it feels like. Pretty much it, yeah. If you've never felt that about yourself, you are in denial, friend. Like, that's just, like, there are moments that you're just like, I look at this, and I'm like, what have I, right? And this is Paul, this is what Paul's saying. Like, I just find myself in this cycle of things, right? This is what we talked about last week so much, where we're just in these cycles that are costly and pointless, and aren't leading us to this abundance that God said, this is what I have for you. And so how do we break that cycle? I mean, that's the question. Like, how do we flip that script? So instead, we find that our lives are engaged in doing the things we want to do and not doing the things we don't want to do. So I love that Paul, I think, answers that question with the most important response to it. It won't be the only thing we'll say today, but it is the starting place. And it's how he finishes the chapter. This is what he says. He said a minute ago, he said, what a wretched man I am, who will rescue me? Here's his answer. Thanks be to God, who delivers me through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Let me just tell you this. If there is any part in you that desires real change, not just habits, not like I want to save more, not habit, like change of you. If you desire to make a real change within you, then listen, you have to know the change maker. So I would just ask you before anything else this morning, do you know Jesus? Not do you go to church, not are you religious, not even do you believe in God. You know, Jesus once said the demons rather, believe, and it means nothing. Like, do you know him? Do you know Jesus? Because I'm telling you, unless your heart changes, anything else that you try to do to create change in life will boil down to you basically taking that change, putting it in a headlock, and trying to force it into reality. So let me just ask you, how well has that worked for you up to this point? Because if you could make the change that you want to be made, you would have done it already. See, I think that every change, real change, has to be first about the heart. Think about this. I think I've used this one with you before. But if you could change anything in all of humanity, and I said, you got one wish, you could change anything you want about all of the world, all of creation. We probably all say similar things like, war, I want to get rid of war. Okay, so today, boom, no more war. But if the human heart doesn't change, what happens 3 weeks from now? We're back at war. You say, I want to change poverty. Poof, no more poverty. Okay, 3 weeks from now, if the human heart hasn't changed, we're back into poverty cycles. I want to change abuse and violence. Again, if the human heart doesn't change, it's all just an attempt to create change and it never lasts. In the Old Testament, part of the work that God says he does is that when we put our faith in him, you know how he describes our hearts pre-him? Stone. He says we have a heart of stone. And part of the work he does when we believe Jesus Christ as the resurrected Lord of creation is that the Bible says he takes your heart and removes it from your chest, your stone, and he puts a flesh and blood heart in you. And he begins to nurse that into the change that he made you to be. I'm going to say it again. I just believe this at the core of who I am. No real, ultimate, lasting, life-giving change is possible apart from knowing the God who made you. So do you know Jesus? And what I love about knowing Jesus is it's as simple as by faith choosing to believe that there is a God. His name is Jesus. He was incarnate in body, crucified, resurrected, and coming again. You go, but I still got a lot of questions. So do I. But I struggle to believe that all the time. So do I. But do you believe enough to believe there is a God? His name is Jesus. Loves you enough to die for you. Rose again. Then the scriptures say, on that belief by faith, God takes your heart of stone and gives you a heart of flesh. That's where change begins. Now, here's the thing though. We don't just sit there after that and wait, like we're waiting for the pizza guy to show up with a pizza. Okay, God, bring all the change. I think there are things that we do. I think there are habits that we need to start to discipline ourselves into. For example, you know the story of Jericho? In the Old Testament, there's a city called Jericho. You may not know it. Details are really easy, so I'll catch you up if you don't know the story. There's two warring cities, Jericho and the ancient Hebrews, basically, who didn't really have a city. They had no wall. They had no place. They're going to war with a place called Jericho. Jericho has walls. Some estimates put those walls as high as 30 feet. They're in two different sections. They're on a slope. And God says, you're going into Jericho. So the Israelites are ready. They're mounting up their forces. If they don't go against them, Jericho's going to come against them, so they're ready for battle. And then God says to them, you know the story, some of you may not, though, so bear with me. God says, I don't want you to attack. I want you to march around the city. Well, okay. And then we attack. Nope. Then you go home for the day. Okay, what about tomorrow? March around the city. And then we attack? Nope, go home. Wednesday, march around the city. Let me guess, go home? Yep. How about Thursday? And this goes on and on. Do you remember how many times? 7 times. On the 7th time, he says, then blow your trumpets. The walls come down and take the city. Listen, it's true like we said last week. There are certain habits in life that have to be broken if we're going to move towards change, especially the change of the life God made us for, abundant life. There's certain habits that have to get broken, certain routines that have to change, certain behaviors we have to step outside of the cycle of. But the opposite of that is also true. There is some change that only happens when we are determined to walk lap after lap after lap after lap after lap after consistent routine lap around the walls of the city that God said, that's the change I'm asking you to embrace, even when we get to lap 4, 5, 6, and it feels like ain't nothing happening yet. But that's part of the problem, is that sometimes we'll stay consistent to some change that God has asked us to do. Maybe it's in our own life. Maybe it's pursuing a dream he has put within us. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a relationship he's asked us to stay committed to. And we'll start walking lap 1, lap 2, lap 3. It's a routine. I'm staying in it. I'm not leaving. I'm not quitting. I'm not bailing. But the problem is that a lot of times it gets exhausting. And so we quit on lap 4 or lap 5. I wonder if we don't even quit sometimes on lap 6. Right before the walls would fall. Because sometimes, here's the reality. We quit because the only thing harder, I think, than starting or breaking a habit, I just gave you the answer, is what? Wow, you guys are tracking with me today, right? The only thing harder than breaking a habit is starting a habit and getting into a routine. You know the old phrase that it takes 30 days, the idea of 30 days to start a new habit? I just learned this last week. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. You probably have. It's been around for a while. There is no research to support that. As a matter of fact, all clinical research that points to behavioral modification says that you need at least 66 repetitions, at least, minimum. 66 repetitions before a habit can start to set in, before you can start to create a new routine. But again, the problem is that for you and I sometimes, this is true for me, maybe you need to own this, is that I get to lap 6, 7, 10, 20, 50. And it can just start to feel like this is pointless. And it's time to quit and give up. I almost wonder if that's not even part of why Paul, in another place in the Bible, in the book of Galatians, he writes this to the church. Chapter 6, verse 9. He says, "Let us not become weary in doing good. For at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we do not," would you finish it? You believe that? Say it again like you mean it. If we do not give up in proper time, you will reap a harvest if you don't give up. If you don't quit on the first lap, second lap, fifth lap, 20th lap, if you stay the course of what I said to do, there's a harvest to come. But you've got to stay the course. Now here's the thing. When he says don't grow weary, that's written in the Greek language originally. And so that whole phrase, grow weary, carries with it this idea. Difficulty that leads to discouragement. So let me ask you this question. Have you ever given up on something that just got difficult? You got discouraged, and you called it quits? Have you ever given up on someone because it got difficult, and you got discouraged, and you called it quits? It's really easy at times, through our discouragement and our difficulty, to say enough is enough, and I've gone too far. And so sometimes we have to remind ourselves that when we're on lap 4, it's not lap 7. And keep developing the discipline to walk one more time around the habit, pursuing whatever it is, the change, the dream, the relationship that God says, keep circling it. Don't quit. Here's a definition of discipline by a guy named Andy Andrews, which is funny because that means his name is Andrew Andrews. I don't know why I find that funny. Welcome to my head this morning. Discipline is doing something you don't really want to do for the sake of something you really want to have. Keep it up for a minute, can we? Just let that soak in for a minute. Discipline is doing something you don't really want to do for the sake of something you really want to have. Can I just tell you, for you, for me, for us as a community, for you as individuals, here is the thing that I desperately more than anything else want you to have. I want you to have all the life that Jesus said he came to give you. The full, abundant, complete life that he came to give you. All the destiny. Everything that he said, this is what I've come to give you. That's what I want you to have. The problem is, nobody drifts towards destiny. You think like a stick in a river, you're not just going to drift towards your destiny. Let me give you another quote. Do we have this other one? I think I forgot it first service. No one drifts towards destiny. Your future is forged by your habits. That's from another author. I don't know if you've heard of this one. The other one is Andy Andrews. This one, his name is Craig McGlasson. Kind of a knucklehead. Doesn't usually say much worth writing down. I think he's onto something here, though. But it's true. Your future is going to be forged by the habits you're setting. We said that last week. If you could visit your future self 10 years from now, would they thank you for the habits you're developing right now? Or would they beg you to change? So I think one question that begs to be asked, when Paul says, don't give up, what is the good? Because that's what he says, don't grow weary in doing good. So what's the good that should become a part of our routine then? And this is where I had 2 points this week where I struggled in putting this together. Because one of the things that I always want to do when we gather is I want to give you application. Like I never, ever, ever want you to walk out of here and go, well, that was entertaining, or that was exciting, or that was enlightening, but I don't know what to do with it. Like I want you to walk out of here, and go, even if you don't agree, even if you walk out and go, I don't think doing that's going to lead to anything, I at least want us to walk out of here and know, what do I do with this? So I started to put together some real application, like real clear, practical, go do this. These are the habits that should be in our life, like keystone habits. And I was going to develop 7 of them. Like 7 laps around the city, so I was going to give you 7. And then I had this moment where when I was putting this all together this week, I really feel like God kind of put a stop on that and said, nope. And I feel like he gave me 2 very clear ideas that kind of changed my direction. I'm going to put the application on you this morning. You have to create the application, and here's why. Number 1 thought that I feel like God gave me at that moment was that Paul did not say, I want you to go make a practice of some good habits. What Paul was essentially saying is, I want you to make a habit out of doing good. And that's different. Not put in place good habits. I can put in place some good habits, right? Like, I could put in place the habit to say, I'm going to live within my means. Not going to spend more than I make. Good habit. A habit of good is I'm going to use my means to bless those who don't have. Get the difference? He didn't say just put in place some good habits. He said make a habit out of doing good. But so here's my other thought that I had. Maybe the good that you should be doing is different than the good I should be doing right now. And maybe the good that you should be doing is different than the good that the person next to you should be doing right now. And maybe the reality is for every single one of us sitting in this room, there is a different good that God is saying, circle that. Whether it's a dream to finally pursue, a relationship to stick with, a personal change in your life that he's moving you towards. You might go, yeah, but so like truth is just for all of us to determine? No, there's baseline. I think there are certainly things in here that God says for all of us applies in terms of how you treat one another, how you treat yourself, how you relate to and respond to him. But there's also clear indication in the Bible that there are moments that as you walk with him, he will whisper to you. Sometimes he'll shout it to you. This is a city that you need to circle. The brother of Jesus was a guy named James. And James writes this in the Bible. And I love this too, because if you know James and you know the story, James was not always a follower of Jesus. As a brother of Jesus, you might go, well, of course he gets it right in the Bible. He was his brother. No, James thought Jesus was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs at first. He's like, this guy's nuts. He thinks he's God. That's my brother. But then Jesus was crucified, resurrected. When you see your dead, resurrected brother walk into the room, it kind of changes how you think of him. So James ends up giving his life to Jesus, believes him to be God, not just his brother, dies as a martyr, thrown off a building. But before all that happens, he writes this: if anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is sin for, what's it? Who? Not for everybody else, for them. So if I understand this correctly, what James is saying is there are certain things that God will say to you, you need to do. There are certain good that he will put in your heart, he will speak into your soul, and he will say, if you don't do it, for you it's sin. I mean, there should be a little bit of us that are trying to follow Jesus that makes us go, geez, oh Pete. Like, you should want to lean in a little bit more, because here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to miss that. I don't want to be so concerned with the sin of all humanity that I miss what God might be saying to me is, no, listen. You also need to be concerned with the things I am asking you to circle, with the habits I'm asking you to employ, with the good that needs to be part of the routine of your life, because it might be different than you. So here's a question I would ask. It's on your outline. I encourage you to fill it in and think about it this week. What is the good that needs to become part of your routine? What good thing right now is God saying to you? Not to anybody else in here, not to your spouse, not to your friends, not to me, to you. He knows you by name. He made you for purpose. There is something in your life, a dream, a relationship, a habit, whatever it is, a change in you that he's saying, stay the course. For you, this is the city you got to start to circle. I just wonder what that is. And maybe you've never thought about it. Or maybe you know instantly what it is. And maybe you're on the brink of giving up on it. Maybe you already did give up on it. Can you walk another lap? And then can you walk a lap after that? And then can you walk a lap after that? You might go, that's asking too much. I'm not asking it. The one who walked the laps to the cross is asking it. Who says, in due time, if you do not give up, there will be a harvest to reap. But you got to stay the course and keep walking. So for you, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's continue to pray for a friend even though you haven't seen any change. Or maybe it's continuing to live generous even though things for you personally are getting frustratingly tight. Maybe the habit is getting into this book every single day, even though right now a lot of it just doesn't make sense and seems very confusing. Maybe the habit's even this. Maybe it's just being here on a Sunday morning with the church, with God's people, trying to understand this being who created you, to love you, to know you. Maybe just being here is part of that. I don't know what it is for you. It's a relationship, a change. I don't know what it is. But I'm absolutely convinced if you're trying to follow Jesus, there is something that he's saying, this is your Jericho, circle it. That if you aren't yet discouraged, you will be. Which is why Paul had to say, don't give up. Which would lead us to believe that at some point you're going to want to. if you haven't already wanted to. Which makes me wonder, how often have we maybe been in pursuit of something God has called us to circle, a habit he's called us, a good he said make routine in your life, and we've given up on it, maybe something or someone far too soon. Maybe we lapped it once, twice, 20, 30, and we just got to a point where we concluded, this just ain't working anymore. Maybe the reality is not that it stopped working, that you stopped waiting. And you stopped believing what Paul said, that at some point, if you just trust me and stay the course, there will be a harvest. There will be good that comes out of this. It just makes me wonder if some of us have missed that because we've given up. Or if some of us are about to, because we're about to give up. And the frustrating thing is, I find that when you want to start incorporating good habits, taking good and making them part of your routine, like the longer you do that, the more difficult it becomes. You know what gets easier the longer you do it? All the bad habits, all the destructive routines, those seem to get easier. And I think the answer for why is really simple. Because when you're saying, all right, God, I'm going to circle this. I'm going to believe that if I continue to do this, it's going to yield a harvest, then the ante is higher, right? The expectation is higher. The expectation is good is going to come. And so when it doesn't come big enough and it doesn't come quick enough, the disappointment sets in really fast. And that's what Paul says can lead to discouragement, can lead to us saying, I'm done. I'm out of here. I want to give you a visual for this. Just the way my brain works, I need visuals, so I'm going to give you a visual. So I want you to imagine that this balloon here, this is whatever God is saying, make habit, make routine. And maybe it is a dream. Maybe it's something that you know that God has called you to do. Something very unique about the fingerprint he has put in your soul and the purpose he's put you on this rock. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's just a personal change that you know needs to happen in your life. Here's what we do. We'll start off at first, because it's exciting at first making a change. And we'll make a little change. But the problem is, 1 circle, 2 circle, 3 circle, and then maybe it gets a little overwhelming or it gets a little boring or we're not seeing enough results, and so we stop. And then what happens? You end up with a deflated dream, a deflated relationship, deflated change in your life. But here's what happens if you stay with it. A couple things happen. Number one, the more laps you walk, the bigger the results get. The more fruit is yielded. But you know what else happens? The more you walk, the more pressure, the more tension, the more resistance. The longer you stay to the work God calls you to, sometimes the harder it gets. But if you stay the course and keep walking, lap after lap, and refuse to give up, eventually there's going to be a breakthrough. I saw it coming too, and I still jumped. Look at your neighbor and say, walls don't stand forever. But you've got to walk them again and again and again. This was the other hard part for me, as I was thinking about this morning. For a while, I was like, man, where do I even go in the Bible to teach this? Because this is everywhere. You see this principle all throughout the pages of Scripture. All the way back to the Old Testament, you see it in Abraham and Sarah. God said, I will give you a son, and he will spawn a nation, and from that nation will come the Messiah who will save the entire planet. And yet year after year after year after year after year after generation, they had to stay faithful to that promise, believing it to be true. Because year after year after year after year, her barren womb told her God's a liar. We see it in Jesus, who every single morning, according to Mark chapter 1, got up and part of his routine was to spend time with the Father in this word and in prayer. All the way up to the garden when the actual soldiers marched in, took him captive, led him to the cross, and murdered him, which would have had all of humanity believe at that point your prayers were useless, until 3 days later he showed they weren't. We see it in the story of a man in Acts who every day, it says he went to the gates of the city of Jerusalem, the gates called Beautiful, and he would sit there and he would ask for help day after day after day after day after day after day, until finally the disciples of Jesus met him, walked in, and healed him. We see it in the book of Acts. There's a man who was carried every day, also couldn't walk, on a mat, laid in front of a pool called the Pool of Bethesda. And as he laid there, what would happen at this pool, the story is there was an angel who would come down and from time to time stir the waters. And when that happened, first person into the waters, healed. But every day this guy would go, and every time those waters were stirred, somebody else beat him to it. But still every day, consistent, he went back day after day after day after day until Jesus walked through the doors and brought him to his feet and healed him. And then we see the opposite of this as well. People like David in the Old Testament. It was the result of breaking habit and routine that led David to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and ended up falling into an affair. And then to cover it up, murdered the woman's husband, who was one of his highest-ranking generals. You go, I don't know any of those stories. If this becomes a part of your routine, you will. And here's the thing. If there's any one application that I want to give broad across all of us, it's this. Sometimes what helps us get from here to the breakthrough is one another. Like you're not meant to do your walk with God alone. You know that, right? Like we are meant to do this with each other. We're just not like a nice sidekick, benefit, addendum if you want. Like you're literally made to do your spiritual journey in community. You have to have one another. We need one another. There are moments where the only thing that will keep you consistent, walking that next frustrating lap, is for a brother and sister to come alongside, grab your arms, and walk it with you. One last verse I want to give you. It's found in the book of Hebrews, chapter 10. This is what we read. And let us consider how we may spur one another on. Now, you get the idea of spur, right? You think of a cowboy, the spurs. Like, what do those spurs do with the horse? It does what? It drives it forward. Is it always pleasant, do you think? Probably not. It's a spur. That means that there are times, and I've felt this in my life, maybe you have in yours. There are times that brothers and sisters have come alongside me in my discouraged moments where I'm ready to bail on something that God says stay the course on, and they gently pick me up and walk with me. And there's other times that they have to spur me on. In other words, it's not so gentle, but it's necessary, it's gracious, it's good, it's right. And they push me towards the journey that God's called me to. And here's what's so cool, and this is where we see the consistency of the Bible. Paul said, do not grow weary in doing good. Watch this. Spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Not giving up eating together. He says, listen, this is so crucial that we do. But not just this on a Sunday. Beyond this. Like there's a couple things that I love just about the physics of this room. For example, one, I love the fact that you go to a lot of auditoriums, a lot of sanctuaries, and everything points right up front to a lot of times a stage that's like super high, so I would be like way elevated above everybody. Like I've spoken some places where I'm literally looking down on people as I speak. They're like way down there. I love it here. I'm basically on the floor. It should be every week a visual reminder to us. There is no one in this room above another. We all struggle. We're all on a journey. And we all need one another. And I love the way the room even wraps a little bit. Because it's like you almost can't look across the room without seeing people. You can't look up here at me without kind of seeing. I see you, Paul. You see me? Can you look up at me without kind of seeing other people over here? Right? It's every week it's like a reminder. You're not alone. You're not alone. And if you're finding yourself at a place where it's lap 18 or 218 and you're ready to bail, you're not alone. Can I just tell you, I want to be a little firm too. For some of you that might disagree and you're like, I'm alone. Nobody cares about me here. If you feel that, listen, the chances are it's probably your fault. Dang, no, I love you, but I'm going to be honest with you. It's your fault. Because there's a room full of people here and another room full that was here at 9 o'clock that care about you. They don't know me. Let them know you. We're not here to do religion. We're here to walk with the God of creation who in that says walk with one another. Let us walk with you. If you're trying to do this thing solo, man, good luck. Good luck. But if you're at a place where you're going, I need some of that spurring because I'm ready to give up. Let us be that for you. And there may be moments of it where to one another, it's beautiful and gracious and sweet and kind, and there may be other moments where it's a spur. But all of it is to push you to that next lap of the good that God has called you to, at the end of which is the harvest of the change that awaits you. Listen, I don't know all of you, and I don't know all of your journeys, but I do know this to be true for all of you. There is change God has in store. Good change, beautiful change, right change. But it's change that only happens when we are committed to doing the right things over the long haul, regardless of how we feel. It's a simple equation, but that's the equation that ultimately leads to change. Doing the right things over the long haul, regardless of how you feel. And when you can stay that course, I promise you, watch the beauty that God will create out of your consistency. Father in heaven, I pray as always that you would make words that are ultimately yours ring true to our hearts. Should there be anything I said that is not true to your scriptures and character, remove it from our minds. But what is true to your scripture and your character, may it yield fruit. In Jesus' name, amen.
Would you stand with us as we sing this last song? All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all. All this earth, could all that is lost ever be found? Could a garden come up from this ground at all? But you make beautiful things. You make beautiful things out of dust. You make
I want to sing like him, I hurt my throat. Man, nice job. Listen, I can't promise you that whatever change God calls you to, whether it's now, or something he calls you to in the future, or in the days to come, I can't promise it'll be easy. Matter of fact, I can almost promise at a point it won't be. But I can promise this. If it's truly change he's calling you to, if it's a city he's saying lap it again and again and again, I can promise you this, it will be worth it. I don't know when, but there will be fruit to come if, as Paul said, you don't give. So one thing I just want to highlight that might be a help to some of you is a thing that we do on Tuesday nights called Celebrate Recovery right here in Paradox. Because I know that there's some of us that might be going, hey, I'm kind of stuck in something I need to get broken out of. Maybe some of you are going, I need to get into a habit that I'm having trouble getting into. And maybe you feel like you've got the networks and the relationships that you need. Maybe you're in a small group that's serving you. Maybe it's just relationships, friendships you have here or elsewhere. But maybe some of you are going, I don't know that I have that. I don't have that resource. I don't have that network. I don't have that group for me. And I need something like that. Celebrate Recovery might be the place for you. Now, the only thing I don't think I like about Celebrate Recovery is the name sometimes, because it can be misleading. Because when you hear Celebrate Recovery, what do you think? Drugs and alcohol, right? You think substance abuse. But here's what I love about Celebrate Recovery is it's not substance abuse only. That's just a part of it. Their whole saying is, we use this all the time, it's about habits, hurts, and hang-ups. Ain't a one of us in this room that doesn't have a habit, a hurt, or a hang-up that we need to figure out how to break out of and create better habits, better relationships, get away from the hurts, get away from the hang-ups, and maybe that's a place that could serve you. They meet right here on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock up here, back in the room, at the other end of the building. I don't know why I'm giving you blow-by-blow directions where to find it. You'll follow signs. But there's a group of men and women that meet here every Tuesday night and have found that that is a group helping them get into those habits or get out of those habits. And maybe that's a place for you as well. So, Bill, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Bill Kleskins here, who runs that group, he's going to be downstairs at the hub if you want to talk to him. He's like, I am? You are. So Bill will be downstairs at the hub. You can come talk to him. He can answer any questions. He, with a team of people, run that, as well as Julie over here. And so why don't you join us, Julie? Both of you can go down there. So I just gave you a job. But whatever it is, whether it's Celebrate Recovery or just the fact that you need to be in relationship, Paradox Church, just know this. You are not alone. You are loved. And if you keep walking the laps, I promise you, a harvest will come. So get out there, enjoy this awesome sun and weather, and we will see you next Sunday. If we can serve you, pray for you, talk with you, there's a team of people up front that are here to do just that. Bye-bye.